the Geek. Talking baseball every week. 'Cause the Gleeman and the Geek.
And welcome to Gleeman and the Geek. Day before games begin edition.
Yeah, we made it almost tomorrow afternoon.
We've almost made it.
Yeah.
I could have called it Media Day edition. I'm John Bonus of TwinsDaily.com. With me, Aaron Gleeman of The Athletic.
Photo day, you mean? Yeah.
Photo day. Well,
every day's Media Day.
Dustin calls it Media Day.
I view it every day's Media Day because the world revolves around the media.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Today's photo day here, which means all the players have been here earlier than they usually get here, and they're all cycling through like this sort of obstacle course of pictures.
Right.
So like
they all got on their pretty whites.
Yeah, they're all wearing their full uniforms,
right.
And everybody's hair is all nice. Everybody's got their chains on.
I think we asked Dustin how many stations there were, and there were 13 or 15 stations.
Yeah, I mean,
to
get to the clubhouse from like the parking lot, which is where I come in and go, I had to walk past Jorge Polanco's photo shoot and then Joey Gallo's photo shoot. And I'm like, well, I don't want to be involved in this.
And what happens is that, some of the local stations and then a lot of the national stations and such, they all sort of line up and have the players come through with photo shoots or like a little bit of video or a couple of questions or something like that. So when then they have a televised game, they have some footage. Right. And some photos and such that they can use.
Got a couple clips of Jose Miranda talking about his favorite player when he was a kid, or something like
exactly
that.
Right. That So it's literally like 70 or 67 guys, going through this 15 station thing, kind of making their way through.
They're thrilled about it, I'm sure.
It's kind of a nice morning off, I guess. It's like picture day at school.
It really is.
Yeah, right. It was kind of nice to screw out in line.
I definitely noticed more chains being worn because people are got their earrings and chains and
they got their haircuts yesterday.
Yeah, basically. And then also Getty Images are taking their shots because then players hold up their nameplate.
Oh yeah,
where it says who it is, so that then there's an archive when articles are written and somebody needs a picture of whoever, like random minor leaguers, who maybe there aren't action shots of, they at least have a headshot of them. Right. So that's what we stepped away from that, and we're up here in the what are we in the TV booth?
I think we're in the TV booth.
We've closed the window. Because the Patreon was interrupted by jackhammering or whatever it was last time.
So we thought it was welding. It was a concrete circular saw cutting through concrete, doing repairs on the stadium.
Turns out yesterday. The microphones will pick that up. These microphones,
they're really good at blocking out that noise.
Concrete being set or whatever.
That was not
is now good. So we got a decent amount to talk about since last we spoke. Full squad. I've been here now. This is my 5th day. John's been here 10 days, something like that.
10 days.
And so almost a week of full squad here. Everybody's been here except for Kyle Garlick, who's away he had a death in his family. And Jordan Balazovic is here, but not participating because he has a broken jaw, which we will discuss in a moment, which is an interesting early storyline here.
Yep.
But like you said, we're recording this on Friday morning.
Also here is Donovan Solano.
Donovan Solano's here. We talked to him yesterday. Yep. And tomorrow afternoon, not only does this game start, but it starts with 2 games in one day, split squad. Mm-hmm. The Twins are playing. Who are they playing? They're playing the Rays and Baltimore.
They're traveling to Baltimore. I actually don't know who they're playing at home.
Rays.
Okay, all right, good.
So Kenta Maeda is starting. I guess I'll call it the home opener, which is interesting. He's going to go an inning. Right. Sounds like.
Yeah.
But that's a good sign. And Louis Varland they send the rookie to go travel, get on a bus, and then tomorrow, and then Sunday.
Tomorrow also looks like we're going to see Duran. Also sounds like I'm guessing maybe for the 2nd or 3rd inning. A couple of the top-notch guys we would expect to be anchor the bullpen are going to be pitching in tomorrow's home game.
Yeah, everybody's been doing well, and so then Sunday they play at Baltimore, what's Baltimore? Sarasota?
Yeah, Sarasota.
Joe Ryan is starting that one. Now, he doesn't have much service time.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sunday.
Sunday is Philadelphia, not Baltimore,
Clearwater.
and that's in Clearwater, and that's Joe Ryan.
Joe
right.
Ryan.
That's right.
He doesn't have much service time, but I would have liked to have been there to hear the conversation where he got talked into taking a bus to Clearwater. Joe Ryan. It's one of their best pitchers. But anyway, so that's it's fun. Like, it's I like getting. We talked about this, but I like getting here before the games start because the vibe is just so relaxed and everyone is just sort of walking around, and it's very easy from our standpoint to just walk up to somebody and have a conversation on, off record, quotable, whatever. And that's still mostly the case once the games start, but it's a little more rigid in terms of everybody's responsibilities and schedule. Right. And like you said, what happens is the pitchers for the early spring games, especially before starters are built up and all that, starters will go 1 or 2 innings right away, especially Maeda's coming back from a year and a half missed with Tommy John surgery. And then the bullpen will be used like in reverse of how it would be, in part because once you pitch, if you're a veteran, you can leave a lot of the time. Now, I don't know what the Twins' rules are going to be this year for that, but I know...
My guess is we get to see Duran in like the second or third inning, and then maybe Alcala.
Right, and then they could be home by the fifth inning.
And then maybe Moran. My guess is if there's a part of the lineup that has a lot of left-handers, maybe they throw Moran out there.
And I saw that Joey Gallo is leading off the home opener.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Which people will freak out about, I'm sure. The top 2 hitters are Joey Gallo leading off and Christian Vasquez number 2.
That's right. So, and Kyle Farmer batting third.
So, yeah, I expect that to be their primary lineup for the whole season into the playoffs.
And Jeffers the DH.
Yeah. So, this is the World Series roster that they want to put together.
We've also got 2 non-roster invitees batting in that starting lineup as well. Tyler White and Willie Castro. Yeah. Neither of which were, in the organization last year. Both of them minor league signees.
They are next to each other in the clubhouse. Tyler White played with Correa in Houston for 3 or 4 years. He is, I would describe him as a short and stocky, slugging, right-handed hitting first baseman, DH type.
33?
Yeah, he had some decent years as kind of a part-time guy in Houston, and then has been mostly AAA level the past couple years. So they signed him to a minor league deal. I'm pretty sure. I mean, unless something crazy happens, he'll be St. Paul. And then Willie Castro, people may have seen him actually a decent amount the last 3 or 4 years because he's been kind of a super utility guy for Detroit and gets 300 bats a year.
Right. Only 25 years old.
Yeah. So I mean, I wouldn't expect him to be in. I mean, to be honest, we're going to talk about Donovan Solano and what that means for the roster. I just don't think there's any real competition, especially on the position player side at this point. Maybe there's some bullpen competition, but I mean, we kind of felt that way before they added Donovan Solano.
Right.
That it was, not locked in. Obviously, they've now added Solano, but
I'm betting when Willie Castro signed with the Twins, it was looking, I presume because he's looking for opportunities. Right. He was taking a look and going, well, if Farmer doesn't play, well, he might have signed even before. I don't know when he signed. I wonder if he signed even before Correa was on the roster. He might have been taking a look at that roster going, boy, just Farmer there. They're looking for a utility player. Now, since then, they brought Correa to bump Farmer down, and now they brought in Solano to.
Or his agent might have just sorted days lost to injury for last season and had all his clients call the Twins and say, we're looking to rent in Lower Town. Is that a good place to be? So I guess we can just talk. We'll get into Solano first.
That's the big one.
Which is the big one. So when we talked last week on the show, we talked a little bit about how the 13 position play, because you have a 26-man roster now.
Right.
There's a maximum of 13 pitchers. And Baldelli was asked yesterday.
2 days ago.
2 days ago. Hey, is there any chance you guys don't keep 13, like you don't keep the maximum pitchers? He's like, oh, God, no.
So it'll be both a maximum and a minimum, essentially.
I mean, the maximum truly is keeping them, and not just the Twins, but other teams from going 14 or 15 pitchers, which would be absurd. I personally think 13 is absurd, but, here's where we are.
Right.
I'm not quite at the old man yells at cloud stage.
Pretty close.
I'm just the old man speaks quietly towards the cloud and then walks away stage of my life. But so they'll have 13.
Mumbles a cloud.
Yeah. Well, I do that anyway. Becky said to me like a week or two ago,
Grumbles and clouds.
she goes, how do you have a podcast if you just mumble everything always? And I said, well, I don't. And she said, have you thought about doing that in your real life? Not mumbling everything? And I'm like, I have more confidence speaking into the microphone. That's true. But so half the roster is going to be pitchers, which means there's going to be 13 position players at most. You got your 9 starting players, and this time a week ago, the 8 actual positions, fielding positions, are all but locked in. I mean, I'll just go around the horn.
We thought so.
You have Vasquez at catcher, Kirilloff, if healthy, which we're going to get into in a second, at first, Polanco at second, some guy named Correa they have on the depth chart at shortstop, Miranda's moving to third, you got Gallo probably in left, you got Buxton in center, and you got Kepler in right. We thought, as of 3 days ago even, that they were going to mix. I mean, they've made it clear since Nelson Cruz left that they're going to mix and match and cycle guys through the DH spot. But I just assumed, given his age, given the time he spent in the majors the past couple of years, given some of the profile that he has as kind of a walks and power guy, that Trevor Larnach would be at least have a clear path to be the primary DH, against right-handed pitching. And they'll mix and match around it and all that. And he'll play some corner and all that. And then, so that's the 9 we thought. Well, that leaves a 4-man bench. Well, Jeffers is the backup catcher. That's one spot. Yep. Farmer's the backup shortstop and utility infielder. That's one spot. Michael Taylor is the backup center fielder and outfield guy. And then Nick Gordon is sort of your infield, outfield.
Backup to the backup.
Right, everything.
Yeah, and out of options, by the way.
Right.
Importantly, out of options.
Which
he can't be sent down.
Correct. The only way you can get him to the minors now is to pass him through waivers unclaimed.
Correct.
And he obviously would get claimed on waivers. So you go, okay, well, that's 13. Now, it's not locked in, obviously. Right. We've learned since then. But we just kind of thought, yeah, all right, that's enough parts, and they all seem to kind of fit into spots. There's enough overlap to give him coverage. So then we're going out to Fort Myers Brewing. What night was that?
Tuesday night.
And right as I pull up, I see a Ken Rosenthal tweet, and it says the Twins have signed veteran infielder Donovan Solano to a 1-year major league contract. And the major league part of that is key because Solano certainly fits the profile of what they've looked for, and honestly kind of fits the Farmer profile a little bit, which is right-handed bat, been around the block, good, solid, dependable, good clubhouse rep, and can play all the infield spots.
And Cincinnati Red.
Well, right. Yeah, they seem to collect Cincinnati Reds.
That's right.
And so, when we interviewed Solano,
it's not a terrible philosophy, by the way, to find an organization that you think is screwing a lot of things up and go after them and go.
Yeah. we said, like, are you friendly with anybody here? And he gave a look around the room and he named like 11 guys. It's like, are you not friendly with anyone here?
Right.
But the major league part, all that means is it's a guaranteed contract, which we've since learned is for $2 million. Plus, I think he can earn like $250,000 in some playing time incentives.
Okay.
Whereas a lot of, like, I would expect any moves they make from this point forward, let's say they bring in a reliever, would be what are called non-roster invites, minor league contracts for non-guaranteed money.
Right. Now, they're not on the 40-man roster.
Right.
They're not on the 26, but they don't have to be on the 26-man roster.
If a non-roster invitee who's not on the 40-man roster, the contract is not guaranteed. It's a minor league contract. If they do make the major league team, a lot of those contracts, especially for veteran players with major league experience, then kick in and pay $3 million instead of the league minimum. So the decision point for teams as they near opening day is, I saw like Luke Voigt, for instance, who we talked a lot about being a potential Twins target, and they actually talked to him.
First baseman.
Right. Slugging first baseman, played for the Yankees recently. Signed a minor league deal with the Brewers. And it's like, well, why wouldn't the Twins have offered a minor league deal?
Right.
Well, they did talk to Luke Voigt. I'm able to confirm that. But the Brewers minor league deal is only a minor league deal sort of in technicality. If he makes the major league roster, which I'm pretty sure they've kind of not assured him, but they've said it kicks in and he makes, $2 million, $3 million, whatever it is. But the Solano thing is guaranteed right from the start. He goes right on the 40-man roster. They transferred Chris Paddock to the 60-day injured list to make room for him. He's guaranteed $2 million. He can earn $2.25. And so then you look at the roster, and somebody has to go, right?
Right.
Of those 13 guys that we just mentioned. Now, they don't have to make the decision today. Right. And given the injuries, maybe a month from now, it's a moot point, like we always talk about, especially with pitching, but even on the position player side. But there's two very obvious kind of solutions here, or domino effects here, right. One of which seems likely to be what kind of gets Solano on the roster. One is Kirilloff just isn't ready to begin the season. Right. Yeah. Now, whether that's...
It's not going to be one of the bench guys. We just went through the 4 bench guys. So now you're into the kind of one of the starting 9.
Right. Of those 9, who is, I don't want to say expendable, but who either has a minor league option remaining, who has a injury question mark. So Kirilloff is coming back from back-to-back season-ending wrist surgeries. We talked to him yesterday, or the day before. Why am I?
Yesterday. I wasn't here yesterday, so I haven't talked to him.
And he said, I'm really optimistic about how my wrist is feeling, and we're on a good track, but he's yet to take live. He takes live batting practice, but does not swing. Right. It's called tracking, right. Which I call standing there. I do that. I track stuff all day from my couch. Mm-hmm. But he's hit in the cage, and he's hit normal batting practice off pitchers or coaches pitching and all that stuff. So his wrist, he's not had any setbacks. There's some soreness, but sort of said to be normal when you have this sort of surgery. But he needs to continue progressing so that in 3 weeks from now we can say, okay, he's on track for opening day. There's still some like checkpoints he needs to hit, or stages he needs to advance to before he's penciled in for opening day. And so it's very possible that we're trying to figure out the domino effect on the roster here for Solano, and it just ends up being, Kirilloff needs another 3 weeks. Right.
And it might not
kick that can down the road.
It might not even be, he's not healthy. It might be like he's healthy, but he's not geared up. He's not ready to go. He might
hasn't had enough reps in games.
He's going to go to St. Paul, get from 85% to 100%.
I wonder about that. I don't know that you're going to get away with sending him to St. Paul. I think it's going to be an injured list stint.
Well, I wonder.
If it's clearly based on a wrist surgery, right? I mean, we went through this last year with him, too, and the year before with him, too, where they sent him. It could
be one of those things where he's batting every day here, and he's just not driving the ball, in which case, at some point, they do just send
that's what happened last year. They were like, his performance isn't good enough, and it's like, well, why do you think his performance isn't good enough? It's like, well, he has a wrist injury. So it's like, okay, well, should he go to AAA or should he go to the injured list? But either way, I almost would say it's tough because in talking to Kirilloff, I would describe him as genuinely upbeat. I mean, he's sort of a even-keeled, monotone type of guy, but genuinely upbeat. And he said, I'm really optimistic. I mean, he's not someone who usually is full of platitudes and all that stuff. So I have no doubt that he feels pretty good, and he feels much better, obviously, than he did pre-surgery and all that stuff. But there's still some question, clearly, in his mind, in the Twins' mind, in the training staff. Like I said, he's got to there are a couple more stages until you can start to think he's going to be ready.
When we go through the injuries and sort of where everybody is health-wise, one of the things we will do is just going to go through, here's all of the guys that are on the roster and whether or not they have limitations or not. And of the guys that have limitations, the number one who has limitations right now is Kirilloff, right? I mean, the other ones that we've talked about potentially having limitations, Polanco, Buxton,
Mahle,
right?
Maeda.
Yeah, Maeda. I mean, none of them, I mean, there are some limitations, I guess, with Buxton and Polanco. They're bringing them along a little slower.
Well, let's put it this way. 3 days ago,
right,
we watched Tyler Mahle pitch live batting practice against Alex Kirilloff. Tyler Mahle said afterward, told us, I hit 95 miles an hour.
Right.
Alex Kirilloff was not allowed to swing. Right. So that tells you where we're at. Right. It might only be a half step behind, but he's behind. So I actually think at this point, that is almost the most likely or most straightforward domino effect of Solano is just Kirilloff begins the season either at AAA, on the IL, whatever it is. That opens up a 13th spot, and Solano is that guy. If, however...
It also opens up first base. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Right. Yeah, we'll talk about like Solano's role in a second. But if, however, and this is what everyone's hoping, obviously, Kirilloff 2 weeks from now, ready for games, he starts ripping doubles all over the place, and he's saying his wrist feels great, and he's playing every other day, and he's on track for opening day, they certainly would love him to be the primary first baseman. They would love... I mean, they still believe very much in Alex Kirilloff if healthy, and so do I. In which case... Then you go, well, okay, let's say he's the opening day first baseman. Well, who's going then to make room for Solano? I honestly think there's only really one person that it can be, barring a trade or another injury, obviously,
Right.
which is Trevor Larnach. And it's not because I think Trevor Larnach is a bad player. I actually am still a believer in, if anything, when not injured, Trevor Larnach has almost proven for 2 months at a time, twice in his rookie year and last year, that he's he can draw walks, he can hit for power, he's better defensively than I think his reputation suggests that he would be in the minors. But then he's gotten injured after a couple months, both of his seasons, tried to play through the injury, hits 150 for a month, gets shut down. He had surgery, core muscle surgery. He has a minor league option remaining.
Right.
And as we talked about, his role would kind of be some DH work and then a backup left and right fielder that can work in there. So
The only other person in the starting lineup that I can think of that has options remaining, I mean, that isn't a catcher,
right,
is Miranda.
right, who
Right? I
they're
mean,
not
that's
going
it.
to
They're
send
not
down.
going to send Miranda down.
So
I don't think.
that's the situation that. No, I can confirm that they're not going to send Jose Miranda.
That would be the shocker. So
Look at John talked himself into like a outlandish scenario. No, that's not going to happen. So that puts Larnach in a spot where he would be the odd man out, similar to how we talked last week that Bailey Ober is the logical sixth man in a 5-man rotation. Not because he's not a major league caliber player,
Right.
not because the Twins still don't think he's going to be a big part of the future, like with Larnach, just he has a minor league option remaining. He's less established than the other guys.
right.
And I think with Larnach, especially given how last year ended with the injury and, kind of dragged down his overall numbers, he's been fine in the majors. He's been an average-ish player in the majors. But he certainly hasn't done enough that if they were to send him down to AAA, a month from now, that it would just be an insane decision or, egregious. And so I think that's what we're kind of facing. And that's the Solano thing. Adds a lot of depth, and it adds a veteran player, and it adds a right-handed hitter who can step in and knock around left-handed pitching. It does a lot of things, but it puts those two guys, Kirilloff and Larnach, in a spot where there is going to be a decision made. Now, again, barring a trade, barring more injuries. On one of those two guys.
We can say it's okay to take a look at this and go, why the hell are we giving at-bats to Donovan Solano versus Troy Larnach?
I talked about that on the Patreon. We did a Patreon.
Trevor Larnach.
Troy Larnach.
I just called him Troy.
Trevor, Travis, Troy, whatever.
Right.
Yeah, we talked about that. We did a Patreon with Dan Hayes, actually before the Solano deal was even official, 2 days ago. And that's the case I made, which is like, are they almost getting like too cute with this thing in search of depth and in search of dependability and in search of defensive flexibility and all that stuff?
I want to return to that point.
You can do all these things and go, okay, now we have a right-hand bat here. But also, couldn't you have just said to Trevor Larnach, yeah, go out there 5 days a week and try to rip 25 homers and be the DH? So, yeah, I think that's part of it. I don't have a problem if it ends up being Larnach going to AAA. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I don't think he really has anything to prove at AAA, but he does need to prove that he can stay healthy.
Right, yeah. I mean, it'd be interesting to see where our heads are at in the third week of April when he's got a 970 OPS at St. Paul, and we're looking there going, do we really care that much about the defensive flexibility that we've got? That we get, we have now three utility middle infielders on the roster.
But here's what I'll also say, and then we should talk about Solano specifically instead of just the effect of Solano, which is I also think that this move, in a weird way, it seems odd to say they just added a 35-year-old kind of utility infielder type of guy or, flexible infielder type of guy. It seems weird to say that I think that could help Nick Gordon get a bigger role, but I'm thinking, like, connecting the dots that if Solano ends up bumping Larnach, then the DH spot, especially against right-handed pitching, the kind of left-handed DH bat opens up because that was going to be Larnach. Well, who's that going to be? That's going to be Nick Gordon.
Right.
He's going to play some. He would then, if Larnach is out of the picture, then Nick Gordon would be the left-handed bat that they put at DH against right-handed pitching, and then Nick Gordon would also play some outfield, which was going to be the plan for Larnach too. And so, if that was part of their thinking, if part of their thinking was Solano has a lot of pluses, and if we're really just kind of kicking the can down the road with Larnach and sending him to AAA for a little more seasoning, prove he's healthy and all that, and the drop-off may not be a drop-off at all. I mean, honestly, Nick Gordon has outperformed Trevor Larnach, certainly last year. as a left-handed, platoon bat, I kind of like the idea of giving Nick Gordon a half a season to show that last season was for real.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. If Nick Gordon does what he did in the second half of last season, and he can duplicate that in the first half of this upcoming season, well, then he's just a regular. Then he's just a 26-year-old guy that you can have in your lineup for a few years.
Right.
And so that, to me, is like, there's so many little like ripple effects of this thing. I also think it probably, the Solano thing, if Larnach gets sent out, it means Joey Gallo might be in the outfield more than at first base, because now Solano enters the picture at first base.
Right. Well, unless Kirilloff gets sent out, in which case then we see
And
Joey
that's all-
Gallo
that's
a lot
all
at
off
first
at
base.
that point,
Let me give out, before we move on to actually talking about Solano.
What if we never did? We just spent an hour saying, we're going to talk about this guy, I swear to God. And then at the end, we were just like, he's got nice hair. Good night.
I think it's worth calling out two things that it is not, because that seems to be one of the things that I'm getting a lot of questions about on Twitter. One is, this does not mean that somebody is hurt.
Right.
Right.
Yes, Derek Falvey was adamant about that yesterday.
And it's not just from the Twins' mouthpieces that we're hearing that. It's also from sources. And people all of the beat writers are checking with their sources as soon as this happens, saying, does this mean that Polanco's hurt? Or does this mean that, Kirilloff's delayed or anything like that? And the answer seems to be no.
Now,
Right.
that doesn't mean
they're going to stay
be
healthy.
an injury.
Right.
But there wasn't like some thing that happened 3 days ago where they went, oh no, we got to bring in a new guy because so and so is injured.
Well, because, we've seen stuff like that at spring training
Of
before,
course.
like with Sano shows up and his ankle is screwed up or something like that, and suddenly Marwin Gonzalez is on the roster or something
free
like
agents
that,
who are in the position that Solano was as of 72 hours ago, which is, oh no, spring training has started. I'm still without a job. I want a guaranteed contract. They often at this stage are almost waiting for some injury to
somebody
occur.
to show up at spring training camp not as healthy as everybody thought they were going to.
And
be.
so, I guess that's time. Like we asked Falvey, because Falvey said yesterday, we've talked to Solano's rep all offseason. We highlighted him as defensively flexible, great clubhouse rep. He played with Farmer and others in Cincinnati, so they vouch for him. And then they just like the right-handed bat against lefties. He's hit .321 against lefties since 2019, the last 4 years. But I think the sense seems to be that he wanted a multi-year deal at the beginning of the offseason. And so the Twins, even though he's 35 years old, and obviously he didn't get the multi-year deal. And so I think the Twins kind of every month or so just circled back and kind of just said, hey, we're still interested. What's the situation? And they weren't going to give him a multi-year deal.
No,
I mean, they ended up giving a 1 year, $2 million deal, which I think is a sound decision for a 35-year-old. But once spring training started, his agent probably said, all right, well, the multi-year deal is probably not happening at this point.
Right, yeah.
Let's pick a good spot for a 1 year deal, and we'll try to do this again next year. And that's what I think created, well, why now for Solano versus initially people were like, well, there must have been something that caused this. I think what caused it is Solano finally said, all right, I'll take the 1 year deal, basically.
I think that's
and he said yesterday, well, two things. One, he didn't want to miss any more of camp. He didn't want to feel like he was coming in behind because he's a veteran guy and all that. And he had been scheduled to play he's from Colombia, to play for Colombia in the World Baseball Classic. But he's not, he withdrew because he basically said, I'm a few days behind. I want to lock in and be with this team, particularly
especially with a new team.
Well, it's and a bunch of other guys are leaving for the WBC.
Right.
So he's going to get plenty of at-bats and plenty of time and all that stuff.
Makes sense.
And so
good head.
That's where he's
at.
at.
Shoulders. The second thing it is not is that, or I don't think it is that the question was sort of like, are they setting themselves up for a trade? Are they trying to, are they going to trade Kepler and move Gallo? Don't think, and then they need, basically, is there going to be some sort of additional deal or 2-for-1 trade or something like that? And I got to tell you, I don't see it. I mean, that's the sort of thing, like, again, with what sources we have, it's not like there's a trade that's imminent. We haven't heard any rumors of anything like that. And, I mean, I think the thought process for people who think that way is always like, oh, well, they want to trade for pitching. They want to, and I'll tell you, at least from the rotation standpoint, that absolutely does not seem to be where their head is at right now. They are really excited about the way this pitching staff looks right now, and probably should be really excited about the way this pitching staff is looking right now. The rotation. I mean, bullpen, maybe.
Here's what I'll say. If they could have traded Max Kepler for a reliever, under team control for more than one season that they really liked,
Right.
they would have done
They
it.
probably would.
Now, maybe something changes with an injury or something in spring training, and it kind of resets the circumstances. It's not like,
and I mean, this does, I guess, provide that additional piece of flexibility on that. I'm not getting any sense at all that Rocco has any thoughts other than Max Kepler is going to be playing right field 130 games this year. That's just his plan.
Yeah. I agree.
Yep.
And so, okay, before we get into Solano, I'm delaying it again. Let's talk about our Wombats sponsors here for the for the show. The first one is a longtime sponsor of ours, which is Harry's Razors.
And we're yes, that's exactly right.
I shaved right before I came here, and then didn't bring any shaving equipment because in my head I thought, well, I'm only here for like 2.5 weeks. You do a clean shave clean for me, leaving a beard on the way here. And then what I realized is, nope, I forgot I'm a human werewolf. And now I'm 4 days in and I got like stuff
Hey,
popping.
he's missing his Harry's razor.
So, you know what I'm going to do?
however, have my Harry's razor with me.
I'm going to go to harrys.com, harrys.com/Gleeman, and get them to mail me.
That's a great idea.
This,
it's only going to cost you $3.
It's a $15 value. It's called the Truman Shave Trial Set. And here's what you get. You get the 5-blade German-engineered razor with the weighted handle. You get foaming shave gel, and then you get this nice travel cover.
You get the travel cover,
really
too.
Makes you feel like Don Draper, like you're real classy when you're shaving. It's a $15 value. You get it for $3 because, give it a try. We've talked about this a lot.
I travel with my Harry's shave gel, and I use the Harry's shave cream. I hope they still have that option there. But yeah, I use my Harry's razor every morning.
Would it be weird if we shared a razor?
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Okay. Because here's the thing: I would use your razor because you have such little facial hair.
Well, that's
that
true.
I feel like it's a brand new razor.
Well, that is sort of the thing, is that it does last pretty long for me. I don't need. I could probably make it last a month. I don't need to make it last a month because they're just so cheap and they come right to me.
Yes.
So I just swap them out every other week.
The beauty of Harry's is the quality is as good, or I would argue even better, than some traditional razors. And they've basically cut out the middleman.
Right.
They just mail it directly to you, so it's much less expensive than that. And so you can give a try. Don't get overcharged for razors. You can get Harry's and get the $15 value Truman Shave Trial Set for just $3. Go to harrys.com/Gleeman. That's HARRYS. harrys.com/Gleeman for the $3 travel trial set.
Our other sponsor, also a longtime sponsor, and also we both are longtime users of RotoWire.com. It is fantasy baseball season,
which
kids.
is a Minnesota company, technically, right?
I think it's Wisconsin.
Yeah. Well, don't hold that
Close
against
enough.
them.
Right.
They're still nice. We've met the owner.
I think it's just...
Here's the deal with RotoWire is we've used it, both of us, long before. I mean, we've been paying customers of theirs long before they became a sponsor, because I really value the database of news and injury information that they have. So you can go into their database and type in, I don't know, Joey Gallo, and it will show you every player news blurb for Joey Gallo, which includes injuries over 10 years. Right. Every time he was placed on the injured list, every time he had a hamstring injury and he missed a game and there was an update, it includes prominent game performances that they write about.
That's right.
And then it includes transactions, trades, whatever.
Also, like season by season outlooks, which is one of my favorite things. You kind of go, oh yeah, this guy was a real prospect at one point. I did that literally this morning for Tyler White and Willie Castro because I saw them on the lineup. I'm like, who the hell is that?
It's almost like the cliff notes of a guy's career. Yeah. Like you're just getting kind of the bullet point stuff.
But they also have all this stuff for your actual fantasy baseball.
That's why we're talking about it now.
Which is they've got the cheat sheets and the draft. They've got the new thing not new thing, it's a couple years old now, but My Leagues, where you can import your league right into their website and get cheat sheets and rankings and projections customized for your league. You can even see like projected league standings and get trade suggestions and recommended pickups.
RotoWire they're providing the write-ups and the info to places like ESPN, Yahoo, CBS. They're one of, if not the most trusted kind of fantasy outlet in the entire industry. And here's the beauty for Gleeman and the Geek listeners. And I always stress a couple aspects of this because you can get a free trial at RotoWire, RotoWire, RotoWire.com/Gleeman. And when I say free trial, here's how you know it's actually no strings attached, free. you don't even have to give them your credit card.
Right.
It's not free, and then 10 days in, it kicks in and charges you $1 billion. They are so confident that if you try it, you will find it so valuable. You can sign up, do 10 fantasy drafts,
Yes.
and then drop it if
That's
you
right,
want.
right.
But they're confident that the product itself and the content is so good that after you try it, you will find it a very reasonably priced, worthwhile
and then
investment.
You'll also have it for football season too.
Well, that's true.
Which
What's
I've used
football
it for.
now? That's the thing where they kick the...
Yeah. That's right.
Okay. So let's talk about Donovan Solano.
Yes.
$2 million, 1-year deal. I can definitely confirm that the Twins talked to Luke Voit. I don't want to say that in the last 48 hours, but like previously this offseason. Luke Voit as a first base type, Julie Gurriel as a first base type, who's unsigned still.
Right.
I think I haven't actually seen Voigt's contract terms. It's a minor league deal, but what he gets if he makes the team. But I'm going to guess it's in a similar range, $1 to $3 million or something like that with some incentives. Gurriel, we'll see. He's obviously been holding out for a better deal, but at some point here, he's going to have to, musical chairs. Yeah. He's going to have to sit down somewhere. And I think...
Is he sitting out the WBC too? Do we hear?
Yeah, I don't know. He's Cuban. Gurriel.
At one point, I know he was planning on it.
His brother's
right.
playing, I want to say. So, it gets back to the Larnach thing. It's also true of like Voit. Gurriel's not really like a slugger, but he's a bigger bat potentially than Solano, although Gurriel's also like 35, 30. He might be even older than that, which is how do you value the positional flexibility in that last year Solano played first in DH for the Reds. But for the 3 years prior to that, he was the Giants' primary second baseman.
Right.
And then if you go back even earlier when he was with the Marlins, in his 20s, he was a shortstop at times. He played third at times. He played second. And so he's moved a little bit down the defensive spectrum, which you would expect for a guy who's now 35 years old. But he's also just become a much better hitter. And so that's played a part in it too. He came up with the Marlins and he was faster. He was a slick fielding middle infielder, good at second, decent at short, all that stuff. His bat wasn't great. And actually, 2017 and 2018, he wasn't even in the majors.
Right.
But the Giants signed him to a minor league deal before 2019. He went to AAA and hit like 350. Yep. He got called up to the Giants, and then he was just like a cult hero for that season. Yep. He literally hit 330 as a part-time player for the Giants. And then the next year, which was the short season, COVID season in 2020, he was the Giants' starting second baseman, and he hit like 320, and he won a Silver Slugger award at second base. He then plays 2021 with the Giants, and I think he hit 290.
Yep, 280, but yeah.
Right. Then he goes to the Reds and had some hamstring problems early in the season. They needed him more, not as a second baseman or as a utility infielder, but just as a right-handed kind of plug-and-play bat, especially because the DH got added last year, so NL teams were kind of scrambling to fill that. Right. And so he was part first base, part DH, and he had like an averages, I think a 98 OPS plus or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I think, first of all, he's 5'8". So I joked to a Twins employee the other day, you guys managed to find a shorter first baseman than Luis Arias. Congratulations. And he's certainly, he doesn't look the part of a, Luke Voit or a Trevor Larnach or a traditional kind of slugging first base DH type of guy. But all the reviews and even statistically last year, he was really good at first base. It's just a question of how much does height matter versus range and arm and just sort of middle infield instincts at first base. I mean, we saw that with Arias to some extent. Yeah. There are some plays that Arias just couldn't make because he's 5'0". But there are also some plays that he can make that a 6'5" guy like Sano or Joe Mauer or
Miranda, who just didn't have the instinct for it.
Who just can't make it. So I would expect, at least barring injuries, Solano's primary role with the Twins to be first and foremost, hitting against left-handed pitching.
Right.
Within that,
and I think we're going to see a lot of. Go ahead. I think we're going to see a lot of platoon type situations here. Yeah.
Definitely. Within that, I would expect more first base DH than second base, third base for him, at least barring injuries. Now, obviously, if Kirilloff's out of the mix, then all of a sudden he might be the starting first baseman. But if Kirilloff is in the mix, maybe he platoons with Kirilloff initially. Maybe he platoons a little with Nick Gordon at DH. They're going to find spots to get his right-handed bat into the lineup so he can knock around left-handed pitching. And then the fact that he can play second base and can play third base gives them coverage, as Rocco Baldelli likes to say,
Right.
because they just ran out of coverage last year.
Yep.
There were just days when it was like, we don't have anybody who can A, play because they're not healthy, and B, we got the 6 corner outfielders, no infielders.
Right.
What are we going to
Yep.
do here? And so clearly the priority this offseason, whether it was Farmer, whether it's Solano, even Michael Taylor, those type of guys, we want veteran guys who have been starters or regulars in the past. We want them in part-time roles, kind of overqualified for the role we give them, and they can play everywhere. In the infield, can play all the spots. In the outfield. And so that's what I think Solano brings to the table mostly.
It is looking to me, one of the things I did not anticipate happening in camp, and I didn't think about, and I'm having trouble getting my head around it. I think the fan base is going to have trouble getting their head around it. I think the beat writers are having trouble getting their heads around it. They are building this team like it's a pitching and defense team.
Yeah, I would say pitching, defense, and line drives is what they're trying to kind of put together.
Yeah, that's right. It is. I mean, you hear it when Rocco talks about base running, which is, it's just weird to be thinking pitching and defense for the Twins when pitching has been abysmal.
And
right?
4 years ago, they set the all-time home run record.
Yeah, 4 years ago, they were the Bomba squad. Pitching has been abysmal. Base running has been abysmal.
Mm-hmm.
Defensively, they have not been particularly strong in previous years. I made some, I think, progress last year, but still some areas to work on. And especially, when Buxton was hurt, defense was struggling, and everything that has happened in the last, basically certainly post Joey Gallo trade or Joey Gallo signing, but even he kind of counts because he's a defensive.
Well, that's the thing.
He's a defensive piece.
He's a 2019 type of hitter,
right? Exactly.
Except he's a Gold Glove, two-time Gold Glove winning outfielder who they feel like can play all 3 outfield spots and first base. And while he's 6'5" and a big hulking guy, he's not the speedster. He's widely regarded as a really aggressive, smart base runner. Right. And so, to your point, I agree. But I don't know that in their head, I don't know that they think they are a pitching and defense team in that they're the best pitching and defense team. But I just think that was the area that they felt they needed to boost the most. And even if it's just getting to above average. And you know what I mean?
You take a look at where the offense is on this team. It's all up the middle. You take where the questions are, or where we expect.
It's all in the corners.
It's all in the corners. It's all the power positions,
which are the easiest to find guys and to mix and match. And particularly if you end up stashing Wallner and Larnach and on and on in the minors, if Solano doesn't hit because he's 35, you're not attempting to replace him at second base, which is tricky. Right. You're just attempting to replace him at bat. Right. Which means you just have to find someone who can play first base or DH or, corner outfield, whatever it is. And so, I agree with you.
And I think we're going to have platoons in left field pretty regularly. I think we're going to have platoons at first base. We're going to have platoons at DH.
Which I'm glad. By the way, what was I didn't want to say the number one complaint about Gardenhire, and even to some extent Mahle, although he was better about it, which is Gardenhire would just trot out, Jock Jones every day against righties and lefties. And you're just leaving money on the table. When you're doing that. And I think the Twins feel there are some players who just play every day, obviously, but especially left-handed hitters. And this is something we used to talk about with Morneau and Mauer. Kubo, really good left-handed hitter. Against most lefties, you probably have better options with just an average right-handed bat. And so Farmer and Taylor and Solano, and now even Jeffers as a backup catcher who can play some DH potentially against lefties, these are not amazing offensive players, but they're competent right-handed bats who, if spotted in matchups primarily against left-handed pitchers, Solano's hit 320 against lefties. Farmer slugged, 5-something against lefties last year. You can put them in spots where it maximizes their strength and it doesn't force guys like Kirilloff or Gallo or whoever, left-handed bats, to take these kind of flailing at bats in tough spots against left-handed pitchers.
But even the guys that are the options, the right-handed options to replace all of those left-handed options. Right. We're not talking Kyle Garlick here. Right. We're talking defensive first guys for the most part.
Who are going to contribute. Right. They may not be in a good spot offensively. Like Michael Taylor, if you're starting him against righties, he's going to be batting 9th or 8th, and you're just kind of hoping he, doesn't sink completely. But he's still a Gold Glove center fielder, so he's at least providing, value on that side. I think it's funny too. I agree with what you're saying, is we spent a lot of the offseason, or I did especially, saying the one thing they didn't really do that I kind of had on my list, because they checked almost every box that we kind of was like an Andrew McCutchen or Mitch Haniger, like a veteran corner outfielder, right-handed bat, who's kind of like a too good to be a fourth outfielder, but it has some injury or aging concerns in terms of being like your starting left fielder. Right. And they never brought in a guy like that to platoon with all these lefty bats.
More of a veteran Kyle Garlick type.
Right, like a rich man's Kyle Garlick.
Right.
Not that Kyle Garlick is not a rich man. But what they did instead was kind of get to that point in a weird way with two different players, which is they brought in Taylor, who is a right-handed hitting outfielder, but he's not a great hitter. But if you spot him against lefties, he can be a competent, average-ish hitter, I think. And he's a great fielder, and he's very fast, and he's a base-stealing threat. And then they bring in Solano, who is a right-handed hitter, but isn't really a corner outfielder, but he can play first base and DH, and he can open up some possibilities for other guys to then go to the outfield and provide depth in the outfield. And he knocks around lefties as well as anybody you could have signed from that sort of Mancini, McCutchen, Haniger type of thing. I mean, he's a 320 hitter against lefties over the past. He's got the nickname. This is a great nickname. Donovan Solano's nickname is Donnie Barrels.
Yeah.
which I think he got early on in San Francisco.
He got that in L.A.
Well, here's the thing.
I think he got it in
LA.
When
we talked to him yesterday, somebody said, "Where'd you get the nickname Donnie Barrels?" And he was like, "I don't want to say." We're like, "Where did you get it?" And so he said that Mike Yastrzemski, who is the grandson of Carl Yastrzemski, who is a Giants outfielder for the past 3 years, gave it to him. So then Doe came up here to the press box, which would have been in San Francisco. Yeah. Doe came up here to the press box and Googled that and found an article from 3 years ago where Mike Yastrzemski says, "Yeah, I don't know where he got the nickname, but it's a good nickname." So now it's like nobody's even their own reliable narrator.
Because Cal Farmer was talking about playing with him as a Dodger.
Right. He played. Right. So they played together in Cincinnati last year. But long before that, they were at AAA in the Dodgers system together. Right.
And I got the sense that they were calling him that as a prospect.
It's a great nickname.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
And the reason he has that nickname is he's 5 foot. Let's call it 5'8". I'll take the under on that, having met him. But he's 5'8". I think he's got 25 homers in his whole career. I think he hit 7 1 year was like his career high. Yeah. But he's a line drive machine, and I know we say that about Arise and other players. Since 2019, when he hit his way back to the majors with the Giants, so now 4 seasons, he has the #1 line drive percentage in all of Major League Baseball, which means he's hit the most line drives as a percentage of the balls he puts in play of anyone in the entire league. And he's 8th in batting average during that time. He's not the most patient hitter. He's a contact style hitter, but he's not Luis Arraez. He strikes out a decent amount, below average. He's not a guy
2-1, 3-1 strikeout rates.
He's up there to swing.
Strikeout to walk,
He's up there to spray the ball to all fields. He can go the opposite way.
Right.
Once in a while, he turns on a ball. I watched a couple highlights. He had a couple walk-offs for the Giants where they groove him a fastball, and he just hits it 420 feet, and it's like, oh. The pitcher's like, oh, no, he could.
I don't think he's ever hit double-digit home runs in his entire
7,
career.
I think, is the most. But
even in the minors.
He is a guy who has a good clubhouse rep. Kyle Farmer basically said he's the guy that the Reds players would go to get info on that day's opposing pitcher because he's got a good mindset, and basically he's just a natural hitter.
Right.
Like he's just a line drive guy. And I think to your point of pitching and defense, I would add in contact and line drive.
Yeah, that's true.
And I realize that sounds silly for a team that just traded Luis Arraez, but what I mean is they're trying to kind of diversify the offensive attack so that it's not wait around for the 3-run homer. Those are great. You still need that. But they want to, that goes into the base running too, which is they want to be able to go first to third. They want to kind of push the issue. They want to be able to score more runs on singles. They want to score 2 runs on a double in the gap instead of 1 run on that sort of thing. And so I think he kind of fits that a little bit too.
The question kind of becomes, do they have a 3-run homer guy other than Buxton at this point? I mean, they still have Correa can hit some home runs. Kepler can hit some runs. Polanco.
They're hoping
Miranda hopefully would be.
Joey Gallo hit 40 homers 2 years ago.
Well, that's a good point, provided he actually kind of comes through.
Right. I almost think they're viewing it as it used to be that the specialists, kind of the role players, were a base stealing guy or a defense guy or a line drive guy. And now I think the mentality is Gallo is almost the home run specialist.
Yeah, maybe.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so you supplement the lineup that has more diversity, and there's a couple spots where, here's the guy who's going to try to hit the 3-run homer. And so I don't know.
It also feels like a reaction or a correction to the way the baseball has changed.
For sure.
Right? 2019, we spent a lot of time in 2019 praising this team for adapting to the juiced baseball, or saying how fortunate it was that they were an offense that emphasized hitting the ball hard and putting it in the air and pulling the ball and hitting it as far as you can in exactly the same year that the baseball got juiced.
All these right-handed bats, even scrap heap guys, C.J. Crone, Jonathan Scope, that sort of thing.
And
Nelson Cruz, obviously.
And they did all of that, and when the year that the ball was juiced, and they had 4 or 5 guys hit 30 home runs, right? Yeah. It was crazy.
5 guys.
Yeah,
there's a bobblehead.
Right, 5 guys hit 30 home runs, right? Well, 2022 comes along, and the ball isn't flying, and we talked to Kepler about it the other day. Kepler was talking about how, exact same launch angle, exact same exit velocity, it's not going out.
Right.
And he started making some changes to his swing, trying to, quote, level it out a little bit, which means he's trying to hit line drives, which means he's trying to be Solano.
Right.
Right? And the reason why is because he's just pulling a lot of balls, and they're just fly balls that are dying at the track or dying short of the track. And I don't know if they have a sense of where the baseball is going to be
That's the tricky part. No one has a sense, because MLB just messes with this stuff without even telling people, and then after the fact won't even admit to it.
Right.
There'll be studies done where people literally cut open the baseballs or test the wind resistance on the baseballs in laboratory settings.
Right.
And MLB would be like, we don't know about all that.
Or where it looks like they were using
different balls.
They were
in the
using
playoffs
unjuiced baseballs for most of the major leagues, but then they were using maybe juiced baseballs in the playoffs or for Yankees games, where Aaron Judge is chasing a home run thing.
And I know people were like, why were the Twins slow to kind of adapt stylistically from 2019? Why did they stick with that kind of wait around for the homer approach? And I think it's a fair enough criticism.
Right.
And obviously they're kind of trying to course correct that this offseason with this lineup now. But I also just think it's really hard to try to build a team that you're leaning into the current conditions of the league in a way that you think you're maximizing value when those conditions, they just change on a dime, without any warning, and nobody seems to know. So
it's also just human nature. I mean, we had so much luck with our first baby, getting her to sleep at night and getting her to eat well and all this other stuff, and then the second kid comes along and you're doing exactly the same stuff and it's not working, and you're like, what is wrong with you, kid?
Yeah, no, this kid sucks.
The kid is just different. If you'd have approached it with a blank slate, the kid would already be sleeping, already be eating well. So it's just it's hard to unlearn what you have done, and I think maybe it's the same thing with businesses. They always say the toughest business you'll ever start is your second business.
Yeah.
Because the first one works, and the second one you try to do the exact same thing. You try to do that second franchise, and it's like, why doesn't this one work exactly the same? Well, because you've got to unlearn everything from the first one. And I think they had so much success in 2019 and could sit back and do that when the conditions changed.
I mean,
they're
literally
going,
set the all-time home run record. Yeah, I think probably for a couple years after that, you're going to continue to lean into home runs.
Well, Nelson Cruz stayed on the roster through 2021. Miguel Sano's on the roster through 2022.
I mean, they won the division in 2022 or 2020. Excuse me.
Kepler's swinging through the fences.
Be honest though, have you ever met a kid and just thought this kid sucks? Not your own kid. Your 2 kids are lovely.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Well, you met me when I was 19.
Exactly.
So you thought this kid sucks. And then here you are 20 years later.
Exactly right, yeah.
Okay, so
you've really grown.
Yeah, now it's this old man sucks is really what this middle-aged idiot sucks. Okay, let me just hit a couple other Solano notes just so people maybe have a full feel of where he's at. I think clearly the depth, I mean, it's one thing to talk about depth, but they're almost like just hoarding. It's almost like overkill.
Right.
I mean, when you're in a spot where
it felt like overkill when they made this deal. Like, that's why we were all sitting around at Fort Myers Brewing looking at each other going, what is going on?
But I mean, think of the deals they've made. Now, obviously, they sent out a rise, so that changed things a little bit. But they acquired Pablo Lopez at a point to sit near the top or at the top of the rotation, which already at that point had 5. I mean, they could have just entered the season with Ober as their fifth starter, and they had a rotation. They signed Christian Vasquez to push Ryan Jeffers, who had been the primary catcher, into a backup role, which adds depth and hopefully improves the starting situation. They signed Gallo, and the immediate reaction was, they already have a logjam of left-handed hitting corner bats.
Yeah.
But now they have a logjam
Good
plus.
defensively.
Right. And then Taylor and Farmer, like I said, Farmer was the Reds' starting shortstop or primary shortstop the past 2 years. Taylor's been the Royals' starting center fielder for the past couple of years. Well, now they're backup roles. Right. They're overqualified for that. And now Solano is a similar thing. He pushes guys off the roster who are major league caliber players who are now backups to the backup.
Right.
Which last year, that became important. Unfortunately. Now, they would love to not need – look, I'm not saying they would love for Trevor Larnach to spend the entire season at AAA. But if Trevor Larnach does spend the entire season at AAA or most of the season, it probably means the lineup is really humming.
Trevor Larnach sucks. I mean, it's
that kid sucks is what you're saying.
I mean, that would be the bad reason for him to be studying.
I knew you would say some kids suck. But yeah, and like you said, they're going to platoon a lot. Baldelli just flat out said that. Like they're kind of running through lineup iterations or scenarios already where when a lefty is on the mound. Last year, so often, once the injuries hit, I mean, we joked about the couple of games where a lefty's starting for the other team, and your outfield was like Nick Gordon, Jake Cave, and Mark Contreras, who are all left-handed hitters. Two of those guys wouldn't be starting every day in AAA. That's not going to be the case, at least initially this season. If a lefty's on the mound, they can stack 7, 8, I don't know, maybe even 9 righties against them because they got a couple of switch hitters. And when a righty is on the mound, well, we've talked all offseason how they got lefty bats. I mean, they got Joey Gallo and Kepler, and if Larnach comes up or Kirilloff is in the lineup, and Polanco as a switch hitter, and then several of the righty bats that they have, Buxton, Correa, Miranda, let's say, well, those aren't platoon guys. Those guys can bat against righties too. Correct. And so I just feel like they focused on quality, not star caliber guys bringing in, but like average or above average guys. They've stockpiled them. Almost all the guys they brought in have defensive flexibility, and then almost all the guys they brought in have a specialty that they can be deployed, whether it's platooning against lefties or in Taylor's case, just being an elite glove who can run a little bit. And so I think that's, as we look back at this offseason, whether it goes well or it goes poorly, that was clearly, number one on their whiteboard was like, we cannot
I think you're going to
get left in the same lurch or in the same spot that we were last year where we had to make lineups almost by default because we just didn't have guys who could play elsewhere. We just had to use the 9 guys we had.
The first time they face left-handers during this season, the first half dozen times they face left-handers, we're going to see a whole bunch of these bench guys in the lineup.
Yes.
And the Twins fans are going to have to react to.
I mean, it was the same thing with Kyle Garlick.
Right?
It was like, why is Kyle Garlick batting 5th? Because there's a lefty on the mound, and he mashes lefties. And
we're going to see Michael Taylor in left field versus a lot of left-handers.
You're going to see Solano bat second.
And you see Kyle Farmer at first base, or Solano at DH versus left-handers. You're going to see this, and you're going to be thinking, well, why the hell is Kyle Farmer DHing or playing first base?
Right.
Like, that is going to happen.
Because they're specialists.
Right.
And it's a very Raysian model. That started under Joe Madden when Rocco was an outfielder for the Rays. So it's not surprising that Baldelli likes that approch, which is Rays.
He wants his Ben Zobrist.
Right. Well, those are the two things the Rays, I think, have done. I mean, everyone focuses on the pitching with the Rays, but from an offensive standpoint, they're rarely a great offensive team because they don't spend any money offensively. But what they do is they squeeze the maximum utility out of role players, and they do it 2 ways. Everyone on the roster can play 4 different positions, which the Twins are clearly trying to mimic. And they'll play some guy at shortstop for a game or two who's never played shortstop before, but just they've given him reps and he's ready to go. They view it, I think, the defense as a collective as opposed to like positionally. It's almost like, is there enough coverage in this group? And then the other thing that they did was completely almost like hockey line changes for lineups, which is like, lefty on the mound or lefty breaking ball guy on the mound versus lefty fastball guy on the mound. Here, we stack these guys. Solano bats second, Farmer bats fourth, and righty on the mound, completely different stacking of lefty bats. And so I think that's what they've tried to build, and it doesn't surprise me, that the front office views that as a good thing, because the front office is going to be much more keen on finding kind of pieces that click together. But then I think they do have potentially the right manager for that, because he came up under Joe Madden, who was famous for that. They'd be in the ALCS and have completely different lineups day to day, just based on the starting pitcher and matchups and all that.
I just realized, with they could easily put Jeffers at DH sometime, like they are in actually the home opener here
against
versus
lefty.
lefties, right? You could put Farmer and Taylor in the outfield for Kepler and Gallo. You could put Solano at first base, and you've got literally nine guys who can bat right-handed versus left-handed versus Plonk, who's the switch hitter.
I mean, honestly, they're going to do that.
Right.
I mean, at minimum, you're going to have 7 or 8 righties,
right?
And they got to perform. But like I said, an average major league right-handed hitter is going to be very good over a big enough sample against left-handed pitchers, because there's the platoon advantage, and there's also the platoon disadvantage, which is why they try to do that. And so I think they're setting things up for that. And like you said, there are going to be lineups posted on days where people who
it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah. Well, you're saying Twins Twitter will finally have a reason to freak out? No, they're freaking out no matter what. So we might as well make it good. But here's what I will tell people. If you're listening to this show, I'm not saying you're not prone to freakouts, but you got a little extra maybe willingness to think about a situation. I would caution, don't focus on someone's overall numbers. In other words, if a lefty's on the mound and Kyle Farmer is batting 5th or whatever, or playing first base or whatever, and you go, "Oh, Kyle Farmer's like a career 690 OPS." Well, yes, but his overall numbers are not in the lineup today.
Right.
His numbers against lefties are in the lineup today, and so look at those. It's the same thing with Garlick, who, by the way, will probably be at AAA to start the season. And it's not, you go, well, really, Donovan Solano's going to be the DH, the first baseman? He's got a 390 career slugging percentage. Yes, but his overall numbers are not necessarily in the lineup at first base. It's his numbers against lefties that are in the lineup.
When those guys are there, it would be interesting to see who's at the leadoff spot, because Solano could absolutely probably post a really good OPS versus right-handers to be having the leadoff spot. He's not we should mention this. He's not a stolen base guy either.
He's slow.
Right.
Okay, so let's hit
Taylor, on the other hand, might be an interesting guy in that spot.
The leadoff spot against lefties, you're saying?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it might be Buxton.
It might be. But I should like having him in the 4
Polanco? I mean, they got a lot of guys who could potentially do it. Honestly, it might be Kyle. No, it won't be Kyle Farmer. Anyway.
Okay.
Let's go through a few stray notes here.
Yep.
To finish up in camp. We mentioned this early on, Jordan Balazovic, who this time last year was a consensus top 100 global prospect across baseball.
Right.
Many people had him as the Twins' number one pitching prospect. He had some knee problems coming out of camp last year. Didn't start the season at AAA until I think mid-May, and was just awful. Got knocked around to a level you rarely see from any minor league player, let alone a legitimate prospect. I believe he gave up like 65 runs in like 72 innings or something like that. And that's, by the way, with finishing on a relative high note. Right. I mean, he had a point where his ERA was like almost 9, and they just kept trotting him out there. And the feeling was the injury, the knee problems, hampered him from a mechanical standpoint, and also he was just behind.
Right.
But then
he just never really put it together, even after the knee was supposedly no longer a problem.
Right. But he finished with a handful of decent starts at the end of the season, where he kind of looked like himself, and this was going to be a big year for him because he had been kind of passed by Varlin and Winder and Woods Richardson, who got to the majors last year, and there's more coming. I mean, he's in danger of being passed up by another group of starting prospects. So show something. He arrives in Florida early. I'll give him credit for that. He was here a week early.
Okay.
Made the mistake of going out to a bar on a Saturday night. And then he made the mistake of I don't know what, but somebody punched him in the face, and he hit the ground, and he broke his jaw, and there was no fight.
Nope.
It was just one punch.
That's right.
That was it.
That's right.
And he broke his jaw.
No charges against him because he never actually threw a punch.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, I Okay.
Was he sucker punched or what? I don't know. But anyway, he's now got a broken
Right.
jaw. And when you have a broken jaw, not only do you get to eat through a straw for like 6 weeks, you also can't do anything. Like
Right.
you can't.
It's
you
hard-
got to sit and
Right,
let
it's
your
hard
jaw
to like
heal.
even do like cardio,
Right.
Because your breathing
Right.
is,
That's right.
bad. So he's around. I mean, I've seen him a couple days. We haven't gotten a chance to talk to him. Maybe they're the broken jaw makes that tough too. I
Well,
guess.
it might be tricky.
Yeah. But so look,
Make the audio real tricky.
they didn't hide how disappointed they were in this situation.
They did not.
They being Rocco Baldelli, Derek Falvey, talking to some people, off the record behind the scenes, they felt what we just said, which is this is a guy who didn't need additional speed bumps on his road back here.
Right.
This is a guy who already needed to have things go well for him this year to reestablish himself. But, so, they're disappointed. This is not the foot he should have gotten off to this year. With that said, he's 24. This doesn't, I don't think, make him significantly less likely than a month ago to have a solid major league career. It just doesn't improve his odds any.
No, it just means he might be hitting St. Paul a little bit later
Right.
than he was this year.
Right.
He can't throw bullpens right now, so he's already kind of behind, and he's going to be behind for another week or two while this gets solved.
Yeah,
so
it's a unforced error
Yeah.
that a player in his spot
did not need.
doesn't need. And so I think that's where he's at. So now he's just sort of out of sight, out of mind for a while. Now, with that said, we talked about Ober now might be in AAA. He's the sixth starter. That means Louis Varland's your seventh starter. Simeon Woods Richardson, who I just talked to a half hour ago, is your eighth starter. Your ninth starter. I mean,
Well, we should talk about the potential ninth starter here,
who's the potential ninth starter?
Josh Winder.
Oh, okay. Well, let's talk about him then.
Yeah,
As the
right.
latest update. I thought you were going to say Brent Hedrick, who was down there doing crossword puzzles, and I helped him with an Enya answer.
Oh, really?
He didn't know.
Good one.
And so he said, that fits. Enya, and then I said, don't forget about that. Who helped you with this? This is when you're in your 10th year in the majors.
There you
and
go.
I come looking for a big scoop.
right, that's
He's going to say, wait, are you the Enya
Enya
guy?
guy?
I said, don't forget about that. Anyway, they're down there. Crosswords have taken over the clubhouse. I kind of want to write about it.
That's a good idea.
I'm
Feels
told,
like Doe should probably tackle that.
yeah. Well, here's the thing. I said, Doe, you should write about this. You big, tremendous nerd, you.
Right.
And he's like, eh. And so then
Doe confided that his next big goal for this year is to get a crossword puzzle in the New York Times.
to create the puzzle itself.
That's right.
Right.
I just
want
get
to
accepted by the New York Times.
I just want to interview 5 people and have them tell me who's the best and the worst. Sounds like Matt Cantorino is the best at crosswords, but I really kind of want to know who the worst is. Right? I mean, I asked Randy Dobnak who's the worst, and he looked around like he was going to tell me, and then he was like, "I don't know. It's early to say." Which either means he's the worst.
Well, just so we're clear, just so we're clear, the worst is whoever's not participating.
Well, right. But there's been double-digit, mostly seems like pitchers, because I'm sure it started with a pitcher, and then they started, like Griffin Jacks is in the mix, Dobnik is in the mix, Cantorino's leading the way. So they're doing USA Today crossword puzzles. Now, I would argue, now I'm biased because I'm a subsidiary of the New York Times myself.
For sure.
Maybe move to the New York Times, but maybe that's a little more challenging.
I think it probably is a little more challenging. Dobnik already admitted that today that he ran into some walls.
Well, you don't need to out him like that. By the way, I went.
It was on the record.
Got some General Tso's chicken last night. That was really good.
Yeah.
You know who I ran into at the restaurant?
Randy Dobnik?
Randy Dobnik and his wife.
Would you go to Max?
Yeah. Max.
Yes.
Good spot. They were coming out when we were going in. Okay, so Josh Winder, past 2 years have been either ended early 2 years ago and was just sort of muddled by at various points shoulder problems last year. Finished on not a great note for the Twins. Also spent some time at AAA and on the AAA injured list.
And just so we're clear, he has struggled with shoulder problems off and on for several years.
So
this was not a one-time thing.
Right.
Right.
Starts his off-season throwing program December-ish, which is common. Had some shoulder soreness. And in talking to him, he basically said, I go at the throw. He lives in Virginia. It doesn't feel right. And the question then is, well, does it not feel right because it's got cobwebs on it for a month because I took a month off? Or does it not feel right because I've had shoulder problems? And he said he's glad that he decided, let's reach out to the Twins and their new training staff led by Nick Paparesta. And they got him some resources of people to talk to in Virginia, and they shut it down. And he said, I'm very glad because what I didn't want to do was do 3 more mound sessions, tear something, and then be out for whatever. So he's about a week behind, they're hoping, in camp. He hasn't thrown a live bullpen session. We'll see 3-4 days from now if he's back in the mix. If not, then it becomes an issue. Yeah. Although, like we've said, he's not penciled into the rotation. He would be potentially competing for a bullpen spot, maybe with someone like Trevor McGill.
Sure.
But most likely he was going to go to AAA and be in the rotation at AAA.
I mean, we haven't. We'll probably dive into the bullpen here in a future episode. But you take a look at the 8 spots that are going to be sitting in the bullpen. One of them is probably, long relief.
I don't know. Right? Yeah, I wonder about that.
And so, that I wonder if as we're kind of mapping out, here's our top 6, and then we've got a couple more here. We're thinking maybe those last 2 might be McGill and I can't remember. We might say, it might also be
Ron Peronowski.
It might be Winder. It might be Sands. It might be Ronnie Enriquez. It might be somebody who's
Al Worthington.
Yeah, it might be Dobnik. It might be somebody that is.
John's ignoring my attempts to throw him off track. What a professional. Yeah. Yes.
I mean, it might be somebody who they're like, let's get some guys. Let's have some guys ready to throw 3 innings.
Bulk guys, they call it.
That's right. Yeah.
So I will say Winder, who's a really smart guy, I think did a good job talking us through the situation and everything. He seems optimistic. Like, he doesn't seem down about it. But when you're on year 3 of this, essentially the same problem. Now, he did say that this training staff and along with the coaches have altered his mechanics a little bit. And
it feels like they're attacking it a different way.
Right. And to try to alleviate this. And they've also kind of altered his strength and conditioning program to try to strengthen different parts of the shoulder and all that. So we'll see how that goes. We talked about Kirilloff already on the injury front.
Right.
Let's see. Tyler Mahle, like I said, through live BP. I think he's done it twice now. He's definitely done it once. He hit 95.
I don't remember if we had a long Tyler Mahle conversation on the Patreon or in here, but the bottom line is with him is that he feels 100% different than he felt last year, and that the shoulder fatigue or whatever it was that he was fighting late last season, he basically said he thought that was a result of the shortened spring training they had last year, preceded by the lockout, which allowed him to not prep as much as he had this year. And to validate that, you can take a look at where he is this year, throwing 95 in March or February, which nobody is doing. I mean,
just camp wide,
right?
And Falvey Baldelli talked about this yesterday. I feel like
Falvey talked about how he's getting a little worried about it.
Like Duran's at 102 already. You got Griffin Jack said the other day he's going to hit 100. He's certain.
Emilio Pagan's like, I'm 96. I don't know what's going on. Right,
well, the other day, McGill claimed to have hit 102.
Well, somebody claimed that McGill hit 102. Right.
We've checked. He didn't hit 102. He hit 100, I think.
Okay.
I won't say who, but there's a front office member who the pitchers seem to talk about as the buzzkill of velocity because he's got the actual data from like the TrackMan devices.
Right,
so everyone goes, I feel like I hit 97 there, and then they'll walk in the dugout and this person will say, I think he hit like a 94.6 or something like that. It's like, well, you didn't have to tell me that. But yeah, Pagan was actually, I chatted with Emilio Pagan a little bit yesterday. He was talking about McGill. He's like, it's not that he can't throw 102. He just didn't throw 102 that day.
Right.
So
well, it's February.
Well, so
I mean, just everybody should be down 5 miles per hour from their peak.
I remember we used to read about Joe Nathan, and I use him as the example because he's the greatest reliever in Twins history. But there are other examples of this too, going back 10, 20 years. He'd show up at camp, and the first article about him would be like, boy, Joe Nathan, all-star closer Joe Nathan, threw 86 miles an hour yesterday. It's a cause for concern. And he would always be like, we got 6 weeks, right? What are we, who cares what I'm throwing today? Right. And I don't know if it's just the way, because of technology and the ability to kind of independently train during the off season, or if it's kind of people leaning into preparedness following the COVID year, and 2 years ago was just a shorter spring, and then last year was the lockout where they couldn't even communicate. I wonder if it's like course overcorrecting. Right.
Yeah, I think so.
Where guys
it feels like it.
I want to show up day one ready to go.
Also, you've got the WBC.
Right.
Like that, there's a lot of people who want to be at full steam come first weekend of now. A lot of the names we're saying, I'm not sure. I mean, Pagan is probably in that. On Mahle, it's not going there at WBC. So, I mean, I don't know exactly how many people this is affecting.
Pablo Lopez is, though.
Yeah,
he was throwing 94 the other day, I think I saw. Let's see. A couple other just to and then Kenta.
Yeah.
who I think was 89,
He'll
90.
be pitching tomorrow for the Twins at home.
Right. Which he's going to go an inning.
Yep.
Yeah, it's I mean, with him, he said it at Twins Fest. I'm full go, and
Right.
that's the one
No
advantage
limitations on
to
Mahle,
not
right.
having him come back in September as a reliever. Is you kind of extended the rehab by 3 months or
Right.
4 months, and so now look, he's not out of the woods in terms of setbacks or whatever. Just like anybody coming back from elbow surgery.
As is, like, you don't really know where he's coming back to.
Right.
Right.
And
I mean,
he's
that's
also-
probably
the
the
other
bigger
thing-
question. It's not whether or not he's healthy. It's whether or not he's going to be
He's
Kenta
also-
Maeda.
He's 35 also.
Right. Yeah,
so, like,
right.
if he had no elbow problems, he might have started to show signs of decline
Right.
where we'd be sitting here and going, well, maybe he's a number 4 starter now at 35. So, there are questions to answer there. The one last thing. Oh, Randy Dobnik, in addition to talk to me about crossword puzzles
his
and
finger?
food. Finger's feeling good.
Good.
I mean, he's not in the mix for a opening day roster spot, obviously, because he's missed basically 2 years with the same finger problem, which has just been.
Again, I wouldn't totally count him out as the sort of a long reliever in the bullpen situation.
On opening day,
potentially.
I will give you whatever odds because they'd
No,
have to
I-
re-add
I-
him to the 40-man roster.
I suppose.
I think he'll go to AAA. What role there? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets back to the majors this year.
Yep.
I mean, that's the goal,
Right.
obviously.
Well, I mean, there's like 4 guys that you could probably put in that role. He's
Right.
at the best he's got is 25% chances, probably less than that given the fact that he's one of them not on the 40-man roster.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Right. On the base running front that we were talking about earlier, they've brought in Paul Molitor.
Yep.
So people listening might be familiar with. He had something of a baseball career. I believe he's from the upper Midwest, young man. No, they brought in Paul Molitor to specifically work with base running on the backfields to stress, like we were talking about, base stealing always becomes the focus because that's everybody wants fantasy numbers and all that stuff. And it's really easy to notice a stolen base. Oh my God, we're being interrupted by
Hold
Hold on. Well, wait. Well, you've witnessed in live Chick-fil-A order taking place is what happened. He busted through the door. We pressed pause, and I said, "What's going on?"
He being Dan Hayes.
Yeah, Dan Hayes. I said, "What's going on? They make a big trade or something? What do you guys want from Chick-fil-A making a run?" And I thought, "Ooh." And then John spent 42 minutes looking at the menu to place his combo order.
Do Chick-fil-A very often.
It's good. I mean,
That's fine.
Yeah. Okay, so we were talking about Molitor, and the only thing we talked a lot more about this with Dan actually on the Patreon because
Yeah,
he wrote a
that's right.
full article about Molitor and interviewed.
Has he
Brooks
actually
Lee.
written said article yet? Or
Yeah, it
like
came out.
he was pre-writing it at the
Came
time.
out.
Okay.
He talked to Brooks Lee. Brooks Lee, his father Larry Lee was the coach at Cal Poly for like 20 years. He's like so Brooks Lee's like the typical coach's son.
Right.
He said his family, growing up in California, they had like a Paul Molitor shrine in his house, like for real.
That's
and I'm
cool.
like, I said, hey, it's like, you just asked him, right? Like anything about Paul Molitor, and then this kid told you, yeah, my dad had a Paul Molitor shrine. Did you think like, well, is he messing with me because he knows I'm writing an article? Anyway, but I give Molitor.
We'll see how many more times he claims there was a shrine.
I know.
Whenever
You're gonna ask
you
him,
talk
"Hey,
about a veteran.
You had any interaction with Troy Hawkins? Yep, we had a shrine.
Michael
My
Kadyr's shrine was amazing.
I had a Trevor Plouffe shrine. I have one of those. Trevor Plouffe shrine.
Are they, all
Trevor
in like
Plouffe has
are they all like in like the man cave, or are they
My
spread,
Trevor
spread
Plouffe
out,
shrine?
the various shrines? Like, are they in different rooms?
Trevor Plouffe has apparently been saying nice things about us and the show
Oh, that's
on
nice.
his show, Talking
That's very
Baseball,
good.
which always beats us in the podcast rankings.
Well, then
So it's like
this is how we catch up to it.
he's like when Joe Torre would give Gardy a compliment after the Yankees knocked him out of the playoffs.
All right,
But I'll
that's
take
good.
it because I like
Yeah,
Trevor.
sure,
Plouffe.
right.
We should maybe try to have
we
him
should hang out with him more.
back on the show.
Yeah.
Hang out. I don't think he's going to do, but he's too handsome to hang out with us. Let's be real. But I give Molitor as a player and as a coach and as a manager was obviously he's a great player. He's 3,000 hits, but he also had 500 steals, and he was always portrayed as like a savant.
Yeah.
Like he stole signs or figured out signs, tipped pitches, and he was also a very aggressive. Early in his career, he was legit fast.
Right.
But then as he got into his mid-30s and became a DH and stuff, he was just an aggressive, first to third, would cut angles perfectly. And so to bring him in to coach not only stolen bases, but the emphasis seems to be even more on taking extra bases.
Right.
Do not get caught flat-footed when you can tag up and go from first to second on a long fly ball. Do not stop at second when you can cut that bag and go to third and force the issue and all those things. And nobody was better in the 80s and 90s than Paul Molitor. And I give Molitor credit because this Twins regime fired him
Right, exactly.
as manager
Yep.
following 2018.
Yep.
And I give the Twins credit
Right.
because they fired him and clearly kept the
Well, and-
relationship intact enough. The breakup was nice enough
Right.
that while they're not dating again, they can at least be friendly.
And you've got a manager that's...
This is who I was really going to credit.
That's right, yeah.
Is Baldelli, because Baldelli replaced Paul Molitor
Right.
as manager. And so clearly their personal relationship is solid enough that both of them are willing to do this. But also, if you're Baldelli, it is weird, or it's a little potentially awkward
you've
to
got
get your predecessor, who, by the way, is a literal Hall of Famer and in Minnesota, a legendary figure,
Right.
will always be a legendary figure, and say, yeah, come on to camp.
Right. And not have to worry about any sort of bad mouthing or anything like that.
Yeah,
Right.
I give him credit that. I've seen Paul Molitor now twice in the clubhouse, and both times he was talking about, I believe, high school hockey. Both times. So that's where we're at. He's really brought the Minnesota
Shocking.
vibes
Right.
to Fort Myers. Let's see, there was one other thing. I was going to talk more about Austin Martin, like an abbreviated version of the longer discussion we had on the Patreon side, because I had a good conversation with him about his down year and the changes he's making and why he's optimistic. And, he's one of their kind of key make or miss prospects at this point.
Right.
But I'll just tell everyone to go listen to the Patreon. We did I thought a good 25-minute conversation, reading some of his actual quotes and just my conversation with him. And I think if you're into prospects and you're wondering about the status of Austin Martin, you will like the conversation we had.
I mean, if you're into prospects, period, you're probably going to like the Patreon over the next 2 weeks because we just see a lot of these prospects. We're going to see them in games. We're going to have a chance to react to them. We get to talk to them, and we've had a conversation with Julian as well last week.
I just talked to Simeon Woods-Richardson down there.
That's
right.
I mean,
a good conversation.
We're going to see Varland pitching in we actually probably aren't going to see Varland pitching in Sarasota because I don't think either of us are going. But, we'll have plenty of opportunities to do stuff like that. We should just mention, we haven't really plugged the Patreon much here. It's a really good, we're going to also have guests. Each of the Twins beat writers we are trying to arrange to have on at least once. You just missed the Dan Hayes one on Wednesday, but if you sign up for the Patreon,
you get the whole archive too.
You get the archive free, so you can go back and listen to that one before we get to Mondays, which is probably... I don't know. Us probably talking to either Doe or Betsy or Phil.
We'll see. We have to not annoy them from now until then, which is always iffy. Okay. Thank you to
Harry's Razors
and RotoWire. Thank you guys for listening. Yeah, we would love for you to go to patreon.com/Gleeman. Sign up for the Patreon. We're going to be doing probably at least 1 or 2 episodes midweek, in between the free episodes, basically throughout camp.
I'm almost sure we will have a mailbag this week.
Yeah,
we skipped it last week. We've got to get one in here, right? So you get the exclusive inbox where you can send it in, and you've got a much better chance of hearing your mail actually read. So that's true.
All right, talk to you guys later.
Gleeman